Thank you, Trish. Major shakeup at the White House as the president looks to get tougher on immigration, if that's possible. Out the door in just the last 24 hours, Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen and U.S. Secret Service Director Randolph Alles. And we're told more will follow. Of course, Nielsen was the biggest lightning rod here. Democrats and other critics of the administration blame her for some of the more controversial immigration policies, stuff like family separation and the detention of minors. Now, on the other hand, we're also learning President Trump blamed her for the record number of illegal immigrants who have been crossing into the U.S. Regardless, Nielsen today said she still supports the president's immigration goals and will continue to help as much as she can. Watch.
I share the president's goal of securing the border. I will continue to support all efforts to address the humanitarian and security crisis on the border. I really look forward to continuing to support them from the outside. I've spent the last 24 hours since yesterday talking with government officials, with administration officials, members of Congress to ensure a smooth transition.
Yeah, she didn't take any questions. That was a pointless conference. All right, anyhow, some insiders claim White House senior advisor Stephen Miller was behind the push to get her out. They reportedly butted heads constantly, with Miller advocating for a much stricter border policy. No surprise there. Secret Service Chief Randolph Alles, he's going to be gone within weeks. The Secret Service, as you know, part of DHS since 9/11. So now what happens? Political analysts say they expect the president to make some massive changes on border control. So what will that include? Joining me tonight, Strategic Communications Director for the president's 2020 campaign, Marc is back. Welcome back, Marc.
Thanks, Kennedy.
It's a tough position for anyone in charge of DHS. No matter what their personal beliefs are and how they try and implement some of the president's wishes, it's really a no-win no matter who it is.
You're absolutely right, and that's because Congress has continually failed to do its job over many decades. Presidents of both parties have called on Congress to change the immigration laws, change the asylum laws. They recognized this was a crisis years ago. The president warned we were going to face this situation, but when you're hampered by court decisions and district court judges making national policy, and then a Congress that's do nothing, there's not a lot even the best Homeland Security Secretary could do.
No, and obviously there were limits to what she was willing to do, and she certainly had personality conflicts with people within the administration, including not only Stephen Miller, but NSA John Bolton as well. So who do you think was behind the push to really get her out?
I'll tell you, and as you know, Kennedy, I served much of the first year in the White House as a special assistant to the president and press secretary to the vice president. I can tell you the number of times that people were rumored to be the secret power broker, the secret person behind the curtain, pulling the string. There is only one person in the White House who's making decisions, and it's President Donald Trump.
All right, so how do you get along with him? If you're Kevin McAleenan, and he is from CBP. He is now coming in to do the DHS secretary job, at least the interim job. How do you get along with the president, who obviously has his own intuition and action about those who serve around him? And how do you make the border a little bit tighter when even Democrats are saying that it is untenable having 100,000 people cross illegally each month?
Well, it's great that they finally admit that it's a crisis after, months, if not years of denying it. But no, when you're in the White House in those situations, one of the things that people don't realize is the president does not surround himself with yes people. He pits people who are oftentimes on opposite sides of an issue. He wants to hear from all sides, but at the end, he makes the decision, and then your job's to go execute. So that's where the new secretary is going to find themselves, and the new leadership is making sure that they make the best case possible for achieving the president's goals, which is stopping the flow of drugs, of child trafficking, of exploited women being brought into our country illegally. Do what we can, help Mexico stop it even sooner than it gets to our border, and then
let's talk about Mexico a little bit. Mick Mulvaney, who's the acting chief of staff for the president, said Mexico is doing more than the Democrats right now. Mexico has stepped up their game. What would you like to see both Mexico and the Democrats do in the near and long term?
In the near term, Mexico needs to do everything it can to stop these migrants from coming through Mexico illegally to enter our country illegally. They're trespassing in Mexico first. And then secondly, we've got to get Democrats in Congress.
So what do you expect Mexico to do? We'll talk about the Democrats a little bit, but what is your goal for Mexico? Do you want them to deport these people back to places like Honduras, El Salvador, and Guatemala? Do you want Mexico to absorb these people, many of them in need, when Mexico doesn't have the strongest social safety net? What do you expect to see from them practically?
Well, I think there's a combination of things that they can do, and I would leave the policy decisions to the White House to work through that system with the State Department, with the White House, and with the Mexican government. But we are seeing them step up. We're seeing them step up on their southern border to prevent people from coming in. We're seeing them trying to deport many that they're finding on that path along the way. And in some cases, as we've seen, even on our southern border, they're housing people, they're helping to tend to them while they go through the asylum process here, and then that's where Congress has got to get in.
They do. You're absolutely right, and Congress has to figure out a better way for the federal government to vet people and keep child traffickers and minor victims safe and child traffickers out or in prison where they belong. And good people who want to come here and work in a tight labor market, they need to allot spaces for that as well. But when you have people like Stephen Miller whispering in the president's ear that all immigration, including legal immigration, needs to be curtailed, that's very problematic for people who have no idea if the door is slamming shut. Therefore, they have to rush to get into the United States now, which I think is what's driving these phenomenal numbers.
Well, I would disagree with a little bit of that. I mean, you've seen the president come out before on many occasions, including this year, multiple times, saying we need more legal immigration.
I've seen the president say that, but I've also seen people around him talk about how they want to curtail legal immigration, including Stephen Miller, who has been the most vocal advocate for that.
And I get that. And that goes back to my earlier point that the president surrounds himself with people on both sides. But you've seen the president who calls the shots say we need more legal immigration. We have more jobs right now than we do unemployed people.
That's right.
But it's got to be done legally. You've got to come through the system. You've got to prove that you've got the skills, the ability to compete and succeed.
And the desire to participate in the American dream and the free market system. I would agree with you completely. I think there's so many people who would love to come to this country and do just that, who don't want a handout. We have to get better at abstracting and figuring out who those people are, because they will make this country a better place. Thank you so much for your time. I know that you've got your hands full and a lot of work to do. Marc Lauder, thanks again.
Thanks.